What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Christopher Jones, aka Dr. X. We are here for Collaborative Practices 3. Thank you, Vibers, for vibing in for this past, I'll say, 2 years now. Sheesh. I'm excited to get this started. We have Steph Hunter with us today. We're going to talk about trauma-informed approaches. Yeah, just flip and vibe with us because it's a very informative episode. Let's get it. Welcome to the Rehumanization Station. I'm your collaborator, Christopher Jones, aka Dr. X, and this is an extension to my Flipping and Vibin brand, where Vibers seek to transform narratives, societies, education, and sport, and a variety of other sectors. So today is our Collaborative Practice Series 3 premiere, where we have an enthusiastic Viber named Stephanie Hunter with us today. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm doing really great. The sun's out. We've had a lovely chat before we've gone live. So yes, great Friday.
Absolutely. Glad for you to be here. Like we've been talking about this for a bit, so it's cool that you're finally here and we get to have this conversation. I'm sure listeners are going to be very tuned in, vibed in to this, especially once I get to your bio. Because when I went through it, I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much you've actually done, right? Because you're so kind and always, giving me compliments, and I didn't recognize like your background, right? So but Stephanie is an independent social worker, a trainer, a lecturer, a researcher, and keynote speaker, and therapist. Her career to date has been driven by a commitment to making a meaningful impact in the lives of individuals and communities, particularly in the realms of trauma and safeguarding. Stephanie is passionate about empowering others through education and support and skilled supervision, equipping them with the tools they need to navigate complex emotional landscapes. Like I said, it's going to be a good episode today. I'm excited about it. And, we're going to just start this part of the show where we just vibe and allow our listeners to get an idea of your background, your personal interests. So Stephanie, is it Stephanie? You want to go by Stephanie or Steph?
Steph, thank you.
Steph? Okay, we'll go with
Steph.
Okay.
Thank you. Fine with both. Thank you.
Yeah, and my introduction to Steph was actually Steph you walk your dog every morning, and when I get off the bus, we kind of ran into each other, right? And we actually know similar people, so that was cool too. But yeah, Steph, what's your story? Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background? Yeah.
I think I should be honest with a story next to that when we'd met, I'd seen you in your picture, and I think I did a really cheesy, "You're Chris, and you looked at me, and then I think you recognised me, and I went home and I said to my daughters, somebody I think's great's just recognised me, and they said something really like, oh, you probably just stalked someone on social media. Really kind of reduced me, but yeah, it was lovely to see you walking because I love the work you do. You're doing some amazing work at Durham University, and I think it's so obvious you're making a really deep commitment to the students' experience, which will hugely enhance learning. They go together, don't they? Their experience and connections, and yeah, you're always doing something wonderful with students, which will leave an imprint and a legacy into their employability and career. So yeah, I'll have to behave because I do admire your work too. Thank you for your kind introduction.
Oh yes, no worries. Thank you. No, thank you also as well. Just now. So, but tell us a bit about yourself, Steph. Your background, where you're from.
Oh, thank you. And I always feel it's a great privilege to try and talk about the type of work, and as I've kind of been working a while, I've probably strengthened my understanding of the connections in my childhood experiences and what I've become in a career. I grew up in a pit village in Durham, a little pit village called Kellar. Not many people have heard of it. If you're local, you tend to say Kellar. I'm from Kellar. But, if you're not from there, you'd say it quite differently. My dad was a miner, so I grew up during the strike. You you've met my lovely friend Richard O'Neill. I think he's been on your podcast, and we're planning a storybook.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. But
what's that about?
You're so thoughtful. When my dad was on strike for a year, so there was no income in the home, my mum worked in the pit canteen as well. I was 12 and the Russian miners offered to pay for me to go to Russia. So a 12-year-old who'd never really left the pit village, parents didn't have a car, didn't go anywhere, no income in the home, went to Russia for a month. Which is a bit of a extreme first trip, isn't it?
Right. How was that trip?
Do you know, there's some standout memories. I know I was interviewed on the television because my memory of it, which I wish I could check, and if anyone hears this and can remember, I know I was on the television, and I believe it was, in my understanding, I think Margaret Thatcher, the then Prime Minister, stopped the plane, and we had to sleep overnight. That's my understanding where I was 12. So I don't want to be politically incorrect, but I was 12, really young, and we had to sleep on the airport floor. So the news reporters for TV interviewed me. And, they were asking what I thought of going to Russia. Well, I didn't even really know where it was. I just thought it was a holiday. So I'd said, great. And they asked how I felt about sleeping on the floor. And I think I said, great, because I just didn't know what to say. But my experience of it, I remember the interview. I remember, the young people, there was 100 children and a few adults. And I remember the excitement of it. Some interesting things. Russia just seemed so different, which it would obviously come from Mine Village in Durham. It was warm at the time. We were in Pitsunda, which is near the beach, and also Moscow. A big memory, which sounds so silly now, but I do sometimes think of how the children must feel, because I've often worked with children in care. And obviously I wasn't in care, but when I was coming back from Luton, because my parents didn't drive and I'd been away a while, I thought, it's too far to walk from Durham to home, it's miles. And we were coming in the middle of the night, the way the coach trip turned out. And I asked everybody on the coach, if there's nobody there for me, will you help me get home? And like I'd have been forgotten in that time. And obviously that the children I work with in care who've been traumatised by terrible experiences, it's a very different experience. But if I felt like that after a few weeks away because nobody had a car, how must it feel when you move and you move? So I guess I've made more sense of my own experiences and why I've probably wanted to really help young people in poverty, young people who've had a lot of change. Just do the best I can. So, yeah. So it's the ticket to Pitsunda. So big thank you to Richard, who's really been so kind, because he's a brilliant children's author. So it's on its way. It's a quite sweet story, really, because it's a long way to go, isn't it? When you're young with 100 children and a few, well, I didn't know anybody. Know anybody. Yeah, it's amazing how it takes you back, because I can almost imagine myself still going around the bus. Will you take me home?
Well, thank you for sharing it. So a daughter of a miner. Okay, I think you're one of the first people I've met. Well, I've met a couple, but not, just a few people.
Yeah.
But the first one on the show for sure. But no, we can get more into that too if we have time throughout the show. But okay, but what about activities that bring you peace, joy, and happiness?
Peace. I get a lot of compassion and satisfaction from work. I still, in 30 years of social work, still love helping young people. So any way I can help, I really love that. Peace, you saw me with my dog. I walk miles, just love it. Love self-care. I co-authored a book on self-care, and I guess that's swim. And I think self-care isn't just the exercise, the nutrition, the looking after yourself. It's trying to live a life that's part of a community too, whether it's a community at work, I love where I live. We live near the college, which is beautiful, isn't it? The Van Milder College, where I see you. And it's that appreciation of what we have around us. It's a beautiful part of the world, isn't it?
Right. I love how you said that about self-care and how it's underpinned by this idea, this collectivism or community. Right? How often do we kind of misinterpret the meaning at times, do you think? In terms of like, sometimes we think of self-care as it's just us. We just don't involve anybody else. And what about, how do we know when we need to take self-care approaches? Is it something that should be a consistent process? But yeah, just how do you feel about self-care?
All right. What a thoughtful question. I think worked in mental health about 20 years, children's mental health, and increasingly they've developed, I think they call them RAP plans, not the singing, it's WRAP, but it's a wellbeing recovery plan. And I think sometimes that's a bit late when you're in service. I think it's in whatever setting we work, whether you're in fostering or adoption or a lecturer, it's about embedding that when anyone's going, students, it's a big transition, isn't it? Probably the biggest one they've ever faced. What are you going to do to look after yourself, to combat potential loneliness, to help you feel part of something, belong, connect? Because there's a lovely phrase that belonging's the antidote to trauma, and I think it is. We recover in relationships. So it's wherever we're working with people, trying to be as relational and connective and compassionate as possible, but helping them consider, where do you connect? Where do you have the opportunity to debrief, the opportunity for a structure if it's a new structure, adapting to a new one, all the things that help you make positive adaptations, isn't it? Being part of something. And when I was a student, I was in the surf club, and I don't suppose I was an amazing surfer, but it was being part of something fun and connective. And it's just so important. And I think COVID taught us that we do need other people. And yeah, I think that's a much bigger part of self-care. People sometimes think it's bath bombs and long baths, but I think it's the humanity in life. It's being part of something, as you say, that collective, the not individualistic, the part of something that makes a difference. That's a big part of self-care. Yeah,
wow.
That's it. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for that. That's amazing, because like I mentioned, sometimes we see it as individualized especially when, let's say, something that we need to work on ourselves and how we work with other people. All right, sometimes so thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. It's very, very flipping and vibing, I'd say. All right. What was that quote you just said? You said belonging
It's the antidote to trauma.
Is the antidote to trauma.
For part of something. I've been thinking about it increasingly because I've been doing some work. It's interesting, in the 1990s, because I'm a little bit older than you, I worked in an inpatient unit for children in London. I went to London at 18, and I probably was a bit young to be working in inpatient care, but I did it for a few years and loved the young people. And I found myself back there doing some work again all those years later with knowledge, which is a wonderful thing, I hope. And I've been thinking about, how do you create belonging in settings that inherently can't be long-term? It's not healthy for young people to be inpatient long-term. There's a risk of, they call it iatrogenic harm, where you can become institutionalized. And I guess if we can't create belonging, how do we create situations where they feel they matter and they're important and they're valued? So I think they're just key principles for how we create a sense of stability and an opportunity to recover. And I think they're useful for everywhere, whatever, especially social care or people services. How do we create this sense that everybody knows they individually matter and are part of something wider and valuable. So thinking of things that the latest this week, which I'm quite excited about, I've developed a lovely therapeutic library for the young people, and it's so lovely to see them dipping into lovely mental health books. And one of them said this week, "Can I just take that?" And I said, "Absolutely. They're there for the young people. Books are wonderful, aren't they? You know, they can transform you to another place."
That's amazing. Yes, I would. Yeah, because I didn't really read growing up, so it's important that you're like and where is this at in terms of the therapeutic library?
I've created a few over the years with different funding, and this one I was lucky enough to deliver some training, and I used the fee for the books. This one will be in a hospital ward for children with mental health difficulties. I've also created one in Sunderland Library for adopted children. That's in Sandhill Library, if anybody wanted some lovely books that help children see that their identity's valuable. You know, adoption can shape your identity, but it's lots of lovely books then. A couple of other mental health services over the years. It made me think, actually, I wonder if your library at Durham University is wonderful, but I wonder if a therapeutic library about feelings would be nice for the students.
Yeah. See, this is Steph showing her stuff. And this is what I was going to get into now, because I know we have a certain amount of time, but I know you talked much about young people, and when I was going through your CV, you have quite a few awards. You have national awards, you have regional awards, you have individual accolades. So, I mean, maybe how does that feel?
Oh, what a lovely question. You know, there is if we're honest, I think there is a validation when other people think what you're doing is valuable. I think people who say no aren't probably being honest. The main were, at the best, probably my favourite time in my career, and we mustn't get too nostalgic, but I set up a mental health service for children in care, which I managed for 10 years, and that won 3 national awards. And we celebrate with young people. I never really got to many ceremonies, though, because I seemed to be having my babies at the same time. But my team would call me from the awards. That was, but it was lovely. One of them, the Deputy Prime Minister's office gave the beacon status, which felt really special. I think it was recognising we were trying really hard to provide early intervention for children in care. You know, supporting the foster carers, providing training, being a relational presence at the children's home, so reducing the stigma. And none of our young people went into hospital for over 10 years. And children in care are overrepresented in hospitals, in regional units. So that meant a lot. And I'm still in contact with some of the young people. One of them was, who's okay with that, because you must be deeply respectful. But she joined me to make a film and talked about her experiences. Social Work England funded me to make a film. And it's wonderful that the young people, many of them, are still doing well, because if you've been harmed as a child, you probably will at some point, and maybe you need episodes of care just to help you process and come to terms with what can be really dehumanising experiences. And if we provide that in a relational, safe, supportive, accessible way, you probably will rehumanise young people, and that's powerfully important, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I'll just kind of share some awards. So some national awards was the Positive Practice Awards for services to look after children. Young Minds Exemplar of Good Practice in 2006. 2003 Beacon Status. The regional awards, you have NHS regional awards for services for looked after children in 2005, services for adopted children in 2007. So you've been doing this for decades, right?
Oh,
It's amazing.
that's a long time.
It's amazing to see. So with this extensive amount of work that you've been doing, could you think of people who have been the most influential to you in your life, in different stages of your life?
I have to be careful because I think he gets quite shy at the reference. And I've referenced him in previous podcasts. When I worked in inpatient London, my manager was the kindest man. You know, and you could tell his favourite part of the role, even though it was an enormous management role, is he took the children swimming every Friday from a mental health unit, which is quite something, you know, taking a number of children in a minibus that the Variety Club donated. Him, Paul Byrne, he's a lecturer now, we're still in contact. We had a lovely breakfast together a couple of years back. He's in London still. And his kindness, he was clear and firm, because the children often had, if you've been harmed, it's going to influence your behaviour. The behaviour will tell a story. But he was so kind and so caring, and he was so keen that the children had opportunities. I mean, some practices he wouldn't do now. I was once really poorly and had surgery, and lo and behold, I got a knock at the door, and he brought some children in the minibus. I got the shock of my life.
Aww.
And now you would never have that, would you? You wouldn't. That was the 90s. You wouldn't have that boundary shift. But he knew I was so fond of the children, and they were fond of me, and actually probably there was thinking outside the box, because sometimes when you're harmed and you're away from home and staff are on holiday or staff are absent or respite of its foster care, sometimes the young people think, is it me? Am I rejected again? And actually they saw that I looked a terrible state, and no, I would be at work if I hadn't had surgery. I don't know if he remembers that, but I did get a shock of my life, but it was so lovely. But he was just the kindest man, and the children did really well because he led such a thoughtful team. And that's what made me want to be a social worker. There's many after that. I'm so privileged. Got a lovely friend, Colin, who I've worked with for over 10 years, Colin McGinn. He's businesses around children's home care. Again, deeply relational model of practice. Mark Finnis. Very lucky to know him and work for him. He's probably got about a third of the UK councils doing his restorative practice model. So I've been so privileged to have, I think, about 10 cities delivered Mark's training. And he's just I don't think he's humble and thoughtful. I don't think he realises the impact he's having across probably the world with his book and his talks and training. And isn't it a pleasure if you work with people who are creating great ripples of change, but they're also not quite aware of their brilliance, because it's just so great to be around, isn't it? And he's a very kind, one of the nicest people I've worked for. But I've worked for some amazing, but I've been very lucky.
It's amazing. I mean, I know you could probably go on and on. I know how you. We'll cap it at there. Sorry for the ones that Steph wasn't able to mention, right? But that's amazing. And then what in terms of, like, I know you talked a bit about like some of the stuff that you've done and that you're doing and the people who've been influential. But what are some of the most challenging moments for you, as I would say, a collaborator, an educator, and a researcher?
I think it is good to know your own positionality well. And I think that academic strength helps you understand that, where you're coming from, what's your intersecting needs and understanding, but also what shaped you. And probably the hardest, I lost my brother. He died suddenly, and I was lecturing. I'd had great praise for my law module. I remember having all these pieces of work to turn around, waiting for, he died abroad now. It took a couple of months for him to come home. I remember when the cop star died and he came home so quickly, it was a couple of weeks, that was still tragic. But I remember thinking, this just doesn't seem fair, even though I went abroad and I had to go to court to try and bring him home. And I don't think I had enough self-compassion for me to take enough time off. But equally, I think I needed that real relational care around too. You shouldn't be at work. And also I was really committed to the students. When I was doing a doctorate, and I absolutely loved lecturing, and I took redundancy, and now I would you never know, be Dr. Hunter, because I love academic work, I love learning. But I think those critical turning points we will all have, and they're not all, I would absolutely change and wish he was still here, because he was my greatest probably attachment figure after my children. And you're meant to have a sibling for life, aren't you? But it's deepened my compassion, it's deepened my understanding for others. I always was a really hard worker and not think you should ever be off work, and some things that probably now I'm much more inclined to, in the supervision I deliver, and how you're going to manage, how you're going to think about yourself. This is really, if people are having trauma-inducing times, how can we trauma-reduce? More understanding when people have got the things that are kind of heart-stopping. Because I remember my legs buckling when I heard, and I hadn't had that kind of moment. So that, and it took me a long time to really understand that interplay, the interplay that between that probably, even though I know that I've still done really professional work after that, that probably would be in a different place had it not happened with the work. But some for good, some of the things I'm most proud of came after. So, and I think probably in work that's part of the importance of supervision, for people to be really, really present for our young people, how they separate off what's going on and allow space when parts of them are struggling, which they will, because that is life, isn't it? Grief, loss, challenge, bereavement, divorce. Everybody will have things. And I think that space, the supervision, I think even sometimes people forget, if they work in a children's home, they go on holiday, how the children feel. We're going to New York, it's wonderful, changing it to, I'm going to really try and create amazing experiences for you here, and please know I'll think about you. So it was a long reply, and I managed it without my voice going, I think, which is tricky, because we try to be fluent, don't we? But yeah, I think it's just made me, I really want to be there for anyone, whether they're a colleague or someone I supervise, or the young people I'm privileged to work with, whatever they're going through. I hope if I'm in contact with them, I'll be as open-armed and as 100% there. And so, yeah, that was and I'm still here though, 30 years, and that kind of trauma in the middle. And I had contributed to an international social work book, and I bravely shared a bit about that, which was really hard. It was a start-stop writing exercise. But again, it gives you something to reflect on, doesn't it? Who we are, what we bring, what we bring, and try and always bring the best of ourselves and understand ourselves and deliver the best we can.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you being open, and I'm sure people who are listening, who have gone through similar situation as you, would appreciate hearing that. So,
you are.
Yeah,
there is always another side. It's that always you will get back up, whatever you. And I think post-traumatic growth is so important for people to say. You will have moments in life where you feel like the ground's going from you, but keep going. Absolutely keep going, because it's a beautiful life, isn't it? Look at this sunny day. Look at how lucky we are. I get to talk to you, who's a really cool person with so much going on. How lucky are we?
I know we are. We're lucky, blessed. Because there's many opportunities within the lives that we have, and it's important to take advantage of those opportunities, right? Okay. Well, I know we're stretching for time, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but we can we're gonna move on to the next part of the show. So that will get more into like flipping the script and the traditional narratives that are within that script. So I had a chance to do an overview of some of your work as an independent social worker, trainer, lecturer, researcher, keynote speaker, and therapist, right? Much of what you do is around trauma-informed practices, I'd say, right? With individuals, families, communities, young people specifically, obviously, as well. So for our vibe audience and us too, let's attempt to flip the trauma-informed script, shall we? Now, I know I didn't mention that Steph has a PhD in relation to adoption at Sutherland University. That's the other thing I've learned since I've been here. You mentioned being here. That's one thing I did learn about how people don't usually use most of the time people don't use doctor. They won't go by doctor, Dr. Steph or Dr. Jones. In America, some people will say, if you say their name, they'll want you to say doctor in front. So I appreciate that humility out here,
Chris,
though, at least.
I've got to pause. Didn't finish it. That's when I had a bereavement. Maybe one day, because I do love the sound of Dr. Hunter. Maybe one day. I'd like to.
Okay. You would like to, but when do you think you would do that? Not sure?
Oh, 2 expensive daughters, if they ever listen. I've got 2 teenagers and, expensive. I joke with them now. It's just a joke. They are, but they are. So, obviously there was funding for the last one. So I look out for the scholarships, if I'm honest. I do look out for them. Because it is something I'd like, even though I guess I'm in the last quarter of my career. I'm happy to say I'm 54. I'd like to do another at least decade, even because I always manage to travel too, and sometimes I present abroad. But I still would like to. I'd like to, but we'll see. We'll see. So I think if I see a scholarship, maybe somebody listening, who knows, then that's where I would think I would give it a go.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you said you finished, or you were like...
No, I wish. Okay. I wish.
I mean, but again, it's a title, but it's like all the work that you've done, does that change? You know what I mean? Does that change how you know what I mean?
You are
what you're
right.
doing?
You are right, because you're very perceptive, because there was a time where I thought, probably growing up where nobody really went to university and things like that, that probably was something I wanted more because of maybe less social privilege growing up. But I think you're right. I've reached it's less likely to happen. I'm okay with that. But then sometimes I do see someone, I think, And the other thing, I think there's always the positive. I do really believe that. Well, not toxic positivity. I wouldn't say that to somebody in a difficult circumstance. But I do think generally, and if I was ever lucky again, I'd probably do a different topic.
Okay.
Because when the kind of funding opportunity last time where it was competitive and you had to write something and successfully get the funding when I was lecturing, I remember it being quite a tight time scale, because it just, you can apply for this. So I tried. And although I'm really passionate about adoption, I didn't really have somebody with specialist knowledge supervising. There was a few adoption academics I would have loved to have had and had conversations with. So the dreams probably, the dream sounds rather, made me think of a film actually, that The Dream. It's changed, and that's not a bad thing, because the writing interest, it's interesting that even though I didn't finish the PhD, I've still managed to have a number of chapters and a book co-authored and articles. So the interest has shifted a little. So we'll see. What I love to write, though, I think I've been really lucky. A piece of work I wrote for a book that Joyce Little, who's a professor at Durham, the chapter of research with character beings adults, I get quite a few people comment on it, students, and say how it influenced the practice. And that Social Work England funded that to be made into a film. So probably more the lived experience that is if I was fortunate enough again. We'll see.
Right,
We'll
because
see. I think
you're in there's so many books, chapters that you're in, you have so many journals, so, it's there anyway, but I do understand, I do
oh, do you
completely
think I could get
understand.
one by sympathy? You know how some people get them, where they get an
Oh,
honorary one. Wouldn't that be
honorary
lovely?
one. Oh, no. I mean, I would say you do more than most academics anyway, so
Oh, bless
you've already
you.
surpassed many that I've seen, so,
Oh, I'm
because some
sure
people
they,
do it
sure
for
they do
different
well.
reasons, right? And I guess that's
Oh,
part of that. I'll do an episode on that one day, actually, where like grants and publication outputs are more important than the actual work in terms of like social justice work, doing something positive for the community. Cause that's what I would argue that's what research should be about, right? It's about
yeah.
increasing a positive impact towards the community, right? The world or the nation you're in or the city, town, family you're in. So
Absolutely.
that's my opinion. But okay, but now we're going to get into like your work. So we talked about this like before. Just what are your perceptions of traditional and normative narratives in the work that you do specifically, if you could think of any?
Oh, I love that question. Well, I think the university work really helped me my growth, because I think we can be really individualistic in social work if we're honest. The fact, if you care experienced, I believe the figures were 18 times more likely to lose your children. And I think actually if we look at the structures of a care experienced, say, mum, well, they're going to have less social capital, less social privilege. We don't construct services yet that they have lifelong relationships, although I think something we need to hold in mind, and I think it is getting somewhat better. The services for care leavers are really improving. I've got a great friend, Kyla, who works for the Leaving Care Benchmark Service. So there really are some committed people out there doing their best. But I think we need to look at that narrative and shift it, that rather than individually blame people when actually it's not their fault, that their circumstances aren't advantageous, and actually let's look at the structures. Let's create hubs young people can go to, in micro, like a therapeutic library where you can have a minute, connect with others, chill out, to larger, to the hubs. The only time in the history in the UK of children in care coming down, otherwise it's risen and it's risen, was the period of significant investment in sure starts and preventative work for families. So I think just shifting how we see people and see people as actually having incredible strength in difficult circumstances.
I have a question in terms of like, when did you recognize that shift? Because I'm assuming like when you start, there may be a certain way things are taught, and yeah, but when did you recognize that the shift needed to happen in the work that you do?
Well, probably Paul, when I worked at the inpatient unit, and he would just kindly explain the young people's story quietly away from them, and you see it differently. You see it through a lens of, well, of course, that's how they're responding because of what they've endured, and how can we calm them? The head teacher's son used to decorate. It was a great big building in London, big house in Chelsea, still there, which is great, still providing thoughtful care for children who need it. And he said that I used to be really quiet and nurturing, and just sometimes he could hardly hear what I was saying, but I was often saying the same phrase, it's going to be all right, we're going to have a minute. And I think that place of, if you're deeply kind and deeply respectful and thoughtful, most people and young people will respond. And you validate where they're at, and things can shift. And then the academic experience helped me put a framework to it, that it's never helpful to individually blame anybody. It creates shame, it creates stigma. and just hold in mind those structural inequalities, and it helped me understand myself. I used to think we were quite privileged growing up because I always thought we were in an okay council house. My mother really liked us to not look poor, so we were always dressed well. Even though we know there were disadvantages, we probably looked okay, because that was really important to her. And I know I'm still the same now, because I absolutely love clothes. But I guess there were real inequalities, travel very far to the school, different buses, no transport, no activities. And I think that did have a really negative influence on my brother. There was very little for him to do, and it was the time of no employment. So as a teenager, he left school very young. I think he was about 14. No qualifications, periods out of work, and really, really difficult. That's not how we should be raising white working class boys. And equally, then other groups, young black men, have it incredibly difficult too. We over-criminalise them. So we really have to look deeply at what intersecting needs are going on for our young people. What should we do? They are deserving, all of them, for opportunities that meet them where they're at. So I've been really privileged to have opportunities to try and meet people where they're at and help. I told you I could talk. I just love thinking about how you can help.
I mean, hearing you talk, I mean, I could listen to you all day, seriously, because you're right. We focus so much on the individual, we don't recognize how the individual and the interpersonal, is impacted by the structural, right? I think that's a main challenge, and when it comes to the shift, because you say, you learn this in academic spaces, or when you're doing your research, but is there a consensus amongst, let's say, people with your background in terms of that shift, in terms of understanding this is what traditionally would happen, this is how we need to shift? Is there overall an increased consensus around that, or is there still barriers to that in terms of the groups that you work with, if that makes sense?
It's a brilliant question. I think we're getting there. I think influences like Mark's relational practice, trauma responsive practices, whole approaches, counsel to really invest in their practice model. I work with a wonderful children's homes group where we're working on the practice model. So because not everybody has the privilege of that academic education, it's trying to give bite-sized pieces of information linked to practice. There's been a lot of abuse in children's homes. There's a big Hesley scandal, and we know a child's rights perspective makes a big difference, giving a child a voice. So it's that pieces of education to people in bite-sized ways that they can make sense of why we're practicing the way we'd advocate. I think there's a way to go, but I think there is a real... I think there is a wish. I think we've got so many young people in care, and such rising difficulties with mental health. I do think there is a wish to do what people can, and I don't think it's always funding. I think that shift in practice and a practice framework that is about being deeply connected and thoughtful and compassionate, and a child's rights focus of giving people a voice. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Giving a voice to those who we didn't traditionally give that voice to. It's a bit like if we were together, I'd say hand the microphone.
Right. Okay. So so shifting the voice, shifting how things are practiced, shifting our awareness around it. For the most part, it sounds like, and that's really important, right? And so when you talk about I wanted to talk about, we're going to have to talk about this because I know we are out of time, but we were talking about this before. I wanted to talk about trauma because you do trauma-informed practice, right? So for our Vibe audience, a lot of what you do, like you just mentioned, there's this shift, right? It's about understanding different experiences And trauma comes with a lot of these experiences with the people that you work with, right? And could you give us your definition of trauma or developing trauma?
Yeah, I like America. You're ahead of us because I think you're American, aren't you, Chris? I know this is late in the
Yes,
day.
yes. I'm from Texas. I am African.
And that makes me think the Beyonce song, but I won't do that because I can't sing. I try. Back to America, talk about developmental trauma, which I think is more helpful than the diagnostics. And I think moving away for some of the young people to something less diagnostic, reductivist, something more, you've been through an awful lot, this is how it would impact, you've had to have adaptive skills to survive. No wonder you might be jumpy, no wonder you might be hyper alert. These are the ways we can create safety. It might take time. And I think moving to that respectful understanding that young people are doing the best they can, and adults, young adults, and that adaptation and how we move from perhaps sometimes maladaptive to adaptive, with warmth, with encouragement, even just to, a lot of young people get that benign leg tremor that they can't control, just helping them understand what it is and like how they might ground themselves and get some peace. And in small, trauma-informed, caring ways, we can make a difference all the time. With different symptoms of trauma. So yeah, kind of a broad thinking rather than diagnosis.
I hear you in there. But that is one thing about America, though. Our healthcare is not free, so it's interesting. You talk about diagnosing people with something, right? And then obviously there's this whole, almost a narrative around the pharmaceutical companies, and how much money they make, right? And with, the doctors and how they work with pharmaceutical companies in terms of trying to increase their own pockets, right? But I love how you mentioned that about not trying to look at alternative ways rather than diagnosing somebody with something, right? But I know, because I'm a black man, right? Obviously. And a lot of, in our community, especially for black men, it's like, you don't go see therapy. There's nothing wrong with, there's nothing's happened to you. You just need to fight through it. What would you say to black men who are listening, in terms of like your trauma informed approaches, in terms of how we can how we can understand our own vulnerabilities, our own insecurities, and how we can move forward with that?
What a great question. And I appreciate I'm a white northern, if you think about intersecting need, white northern woman, so I hope it offers something. I think black men and young black men have been exposed to, I'm sure, racism, I'm sure really difficult experiences, I'm sure that kind of unfair masculinities that you're meant to contain emotions. We know that sociologically. And I think, go gently with yourselves, be kind to yourself, reach out. There's something wonderfully brave about young black men who can, and all ages, who can reach out about feelings, and that it's a model if you have children. And it's a shameful thing that across the world they're overrepresented in the higher tiers, detained, health wards, secure wards. That can't be right. So the earlier you seek help, support, and the earlier you validate how well you're doing, given the disadvantages that are out there. I'm pleased to see, because I don't profess to be the best at thinking about this, that there are some great male role models, and I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I genuinely do, because you've got a big international population at Durham, and you're doing so many social things to help them feel connected. So that in itself, if you create that community, it's going to reduce some barriers to seeking help. But I guess it's that going gently, respecting your feelings, seeking help if you need to, and seeking your tribe or community or squad. Sports, of course. And look at the contribution. Linked to the question, the therapeutic library, I bought some beautiful books for young people about gifted males, and lots of lovely Marcus Rashford books, because he's a good role model. So yeah, it's find role models and try, I guess, to move to post-traumatic growth if you can, which is about, using your experiences to move forward. So yes, yeah, but good question.
Yeah,
Really
so
good question.
I know I put you on the spot, but I knew you would be brilliant with the answer because I'm doing research as well for like mentorship for like researchers from racial minoritized backgrounds, right? And even just with young men or young people in general, there's this we were talking about young black people. There's this idea. I mean, there's this ways of understanding that sometimes if you want a counselor, if you have mental issues, like, right, there's counselors, it's predominantly white here, right? So it's important to know who you can and cannot go to, right?
Mm.
And that's why I was intentional when I said black, because sometimes when race is brought into it, people think that if they're not from racial minoritized background, that they can't learn, or it's not a similar type of approach that they can take. Does that make sense? Where everyone can take that approach, right? It's just there's different structural processes that disadvantage groups differently, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why it's important to understand that. So if we're talking about black people specifically, there's, like I mentioned, because I'll go back to representation. You said how role models are important, but sometimes it's not always about someone who's the same similar ethnic background as you. It's someone who is an ally for the cause and understands what you're going through, right? And I think that's from the research that I've been doing with like postgraduates. That's one of the main contributors in terms of who people like us would want to work with. Does that make sense? So
really
I appreciate your answer. That was an amazing response. So I'll put you on the spot, but you respond brilliantly. That's why you're here. We flip and vibe, and that honesty and authenticity, like it's showing for sure. Now, this will be my last question before we get to the very, very end, okay? Because I know we're past time. But where do you see yourself? The work that you're doing, it's been decades and it's been amazing. Like looking at your CV and everything that you've been doing, and I'm gonna have to look at more of your papers and your books that you contributed to. But where do you see your work leaving a lasting legacy and positively impacting others?
That's so kind. I've got the storybook with Richard, but I would like to write my own full text. I've co-authored, but I would like to kind of summarize all the practices I think are helpful. I have got the contract. I just need to get writing. What else? I want to keep working for another decade at least. I want to keep making an impact. I love the opportunities to work. I'm really enjoying, I provide a lot of supervision for services, really enjoying that. I like the Keynote because it's lovely to reach a wide audience. I've just presented in Malta again, and I'm off to present in Canada in June, which I best get organised. And that's interesting. The title's rehumanising services. Cool. So just to keep contributing, I hope making a difference on the micro level of the families, young people I still meet, and on a larger with perhaps the bigger audiences. So yeah, just keep trying. I feel very, very fortunate. I probably never imagined this from the Pit Village position all those years ago. But I've been really fortunate. Didn't imagine myself talking to someone as great as you, so how lucky am I?
I appreciate that, but I never thought that either. I mean, you're an amazing person. I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, we're now going to, at the conclude part of the show, we're going to offer us insight on rehumanization. So if you could reflect on your journey thus far, what do you know now that you wish you knew before?
It's such a good question. I think you probably captured it. It's the authenticity. I think sometimes when we're younger self, sometimes there's parts of our experiences we think, aren't something to be proud of. I probably didn't really understand some of my experiences growing up, and I think it's accepting all of us. I think it's accepting all that we bring and the value we bring as people. And if we just treat people with some humanity, that will make a huge difference. I used to, for example, when I first started as a social worker, I would apply to Greggs for a lot of charities. People need a fridge, they need a washer. And whilst those things are still hugely valuable, and it's great we have fabulous charities like Greggs, I think the humanity you bring in yourself and how you hold people in mind, the intentionality of your interventions, and that probably makes as much difference as what you deliver. I mean, evidence-based practice, thoughtful care is hugely important, but how you are and how you greet people and how you're consistent and how you hold them in mind, that's probably the most important. And just being okay with authentic me, I guess. That's probably what I would say to a younger me.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, you're right. Sometimes we can be a bit too hard on ourselves, right?
Mm.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. We've talked a bit about, how do we shift the narrative, talk about your background, being a daughter of a miner, going to Russia. We talked about a bit about what brings you peace, love, and happiness, and much of what you're saying to me, it seems like you just about collaborating and about supporting and enhancing others' experiences, right? And just allowing people to find themselves in the best way that they can and they know how, right? And using the resources that are available to them. And we appreciate people like you. We need more people like you, right? And then we talked about how you're flipping the script is basically trying to shift the narrative, trying to just shift, the narrative and how we view individual experiences, and how we need to understand the structural levels, the interpersonal levels. And when we think about the individual levels, it's not about diagnosing experiences. It's about looking at the social aspects, looking at other approaches, right? Just like you mentioned the word broadening approaches, right? Now, with all that being said, what does rehumanization look like to you, mean to you?
Well, I think it's really being as deeply relational as you can. I think it's really respecting lived experience. I think it's trying to be as personalised as we can, trying to reduce inequalities, promote human rights, aiming to help people reach post-traumatic growth, and being as kind, collaborative and compassionate to people in all the journeys we meet in life. And if we don't get the kindness back, just trying to think, well, maybe that's the place they're at, but I'll continue to be as thoughtful as I can. So it's a whole way of being, I guess, a way of being that's as thoughtful and humanising as you can. I hope that gets it.
Ooh, thank you. I mean, that gets the whole spectrum of it, right? It's a process and it's fluid, like you mentioned. It's just, thank you for sharing that, because you're right. Belonging. It sounds like what you mentioned before about belonging and working with other people, right? And recognizing that we're all human, that we all need to work together, and we need to understand ourselves. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, well, how you feeling? We're done now.
Oh, I enjoyed it, but you were easy to talk to, and it's what a great privilege to talk about what we're trying to do. Human endeavor, isn't it?
I know, it's amazing. I'm gonna have you back on. We're gonna do the free flow combo series. We can just talk, because it's amazing the work that you do. So, do you have any social media handles that people can follow you on? I know you're on LinkedIn. Is that pretty much?
Yeah, that's probably it. The other ones, maybe it's age or just kind of dog pictures. You wouldn't want to follow me on Instagram for dog pictures. So LinkedIn, it'd be lovely if people wanted to connect.
LinkedIn,
and share.
Okay. I'm gonna find Steph. She's on LinkedIn. Stephanie Hunter. All right. Well, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. But until next time, because you'll definitely be back on One Love.